I came up with this idea about dream jobs. And the very first dream job in the Making a Living in Maine issue of Down East Magazine was Baxter Park Ranger. And so I went up to the park to interview a couple rangers, and I had been the outdoor guy at the park, so at Down East, so I had written a lot about the park and decided that it was time to follow the dream job. And so a couple months later, I went up the stairs to the editor's office and sat down and said, remember that article that I wrote about dream jobs? And the first one was Baxter Park Ranger. I'm going to go become a Baxter Park Ranger. And so that's how it all began. A lot of people like to ask me, so how do you go from a desk job as a writer to rescuing people and fighting forest fires, etc.? And basically at the park we don't have any degree requirements for those of us at my level anyway. For front country rangers, we have some, they prefer to hire people with degrees for some of the year-round positions, but you don't have to necessarily have a degree to be at my level. And we do mostly on-the-job training, which we'll get to here in a second. So I was a volunteer firefighter, so I had done rescue. I was a registered Maine guide, so they knew that I was somewhat, the warden service at least thought I was somewhat competent in the outdoors. I had done a couple rescue, well, a rescue at the park at that point, but rescues as a firefighter. That's basically how I put my foot in the door. And some people, I knew a lot of the rangers from having written about them. So that's kind of how the transition happened. But this is the new book, most of you know. And this is Baxter Park, which again, I know most people here probably has, I'm assuming probably everybody's been there. I know you've been there. I know you folks have been there. I know you folks have been there. But this is basically the south end of the park, the mountain. And so my duty station is on the west side, the best side, which is over here at Dacey Pond. So Dacey Pond is close enough to Katahdin Stream that I will often get sent on rescues up the Hunt Trail. And it's close enough to A-Ball that I have done plenty of rescues on the A-Ball Trail. That's my duty station, but I am, I do things park-wide. Not typically, most days you'll find me at Dacey Pond, but we do what the park likes to refer to as other duties as assigned. So last, I guess two summers ago, I fought a fire up here. I've done rescues on South Branch, up here on the Travelers. I've done rescues over here on the east side. I've done rescues down here and fought fires down here. So we just kind of go where we're sent, but on most days you'll find, well, I'll get there in a second. This is the park, and this is the way that it was put together by Percival Baxter. So the very first parcel was around Katahdin, you can see here in red, and it was 1931. And the thing that I always found fascinating is that the second parcel was up here at South Branch Pond, which is pretty dang far, as many of you have driven from down here around Katahdin. And he just had the foresight, he had the idea that he would be able to one day sew all of these pieces together, and he did. When I first arrived at the park, I guess that's no longer, when I first started writing stories and whatnot, I remember it was the West Branch lands that had been purchased down along the West Branch. And then when I was at the park, about the time I transferred to Dacey, we purchased part of Katahdin Lake and then finished the whole of this area in 2012. One of the things that's kind of neat about Baxter Park now is that the whole area is in conservation now, all the way around the park. When I started, they used to do a lot of cutting down here. So you'd be driving in and you'd see cut over, you still do to a certain extent, but from this point over here, the Nature Conservancy owns a lot of the stuff over here. Now Woods and Waters owns a lot of the stuff over here, and pretty much the park is ringed by land that's in conservation, which is kind of cool. Makes one of the biggest wildlands, basically in the eastern United States. So I put up pretty pictures here because, again, a lot of the folks who I do these talks to have never been there. But many of you will recognize the knife edge there, and Hamlin Ridge. And you can see that it's not a very forgiving place. Of course, knife edge, Heelan Taylor. One of the things that happens a lot is people decide that there's a quicker way down to Chimney Pond from the knife edge here. I say that usually every year, every couple of years or so, people will decide they want to make their own way down the mountain rather than sticking to the trail, and it never ends well. This is closer to my neighborhood in the park. This is perhaps my favorite mountain in the whole park, which is Double Top, and this is on the Kidney Pond Bridge, the bridge to Kidney Pond. The Sadahunk Stream goes right by my camp, and so this is Double Top. And I always say that people always come and ask what the best view in the entire park is, and I would argue that it's up on top of Double Top because you're looking at Katahdin. People are often surprised to hear that the best view is not atop Katahdin. It's fantastic on top of Katahdin, but the view that Double Top gives you of Katahdin is just really mind-boggling.
So how long does it take to get to the top of Double Top?
Double Top, 4 hours, something like that, 3-4 hours. Round trip, 6 or 7. Katahdin Stream Falls. And this is, as many of you know, my duty station, well, my housing. So you can see this is Double Top back here. So for 3.5 days a week, that is where Lily and I live. And this year, the irony is, we're building a house off-grid. So at least for this summer, this is going to be the posh place that we live, with the flush toilet and a shower rather than a sun shower. So this would be my duty station, and when I started courting Lily, I pointed out I have my name on a building, as you would. So people often ask, what are these? These are backpack pumps for firefighting. And you can see it used to be myself and my partner Charity Lavasser, and Charity retired this year. So now up at Dixie on the wall it says Rangers Andrew Vietze, and I joke about my multiple personalities. But this is the place where you sign out your canoes. And the place where you will find me most mornings. And this is the real place where the action is. Dacey Pond, where we have 6 canoes and now 3 kayaks. And a lot of people don't know, but the Appalachian Trail goes around over there about here. The Hunt Trail goes up. The Avall Trail goes up, and this is the Owl. This is Barren Mountain that has no trails, but I always wish that it did. And Dacey Pond, which is a shallow pond with a lot of good trout fishing for trout fishermen and women.
You didn't hear this story when I was there.
Oh,
I spent 2 weeks, I caught one. That's how bad of a fisherman I was.
Well, we had one of the things that happened was, I don't know if it was last year, we had a woman who came up to my office and she was horrified. What do I do? What do I do? I said, well, what happened? And she said, there's a fish down there and it's hooked, and I caught it and I don't know what to do. And she was aghast that she had done this to this poor fish, and it was flopping away. And I said, well, what you do now is you eat it. I mean, it's too late for the fish. It was ginormous. And I had all these other fishermen that were just like, you know, I've fished there for 40 years, never caught a fish that good. But, and she didn't even seem to enjoy it, unfortunately. So this is, for those who don't know, this is so Daisy Pond, my duty station, has 10 cabins, and this is one of the 2-person cabins. So they have bunks, which I think are pretty comfortable actually, gas lights, and a wood stove, and I always just kind of describe it as like a tent. You would bring everything you would camping otherwise, including your cookware, your linens, everything you would bring for camping. You just happen to have a roof above your head and fewer bugs, hopefully. But we do provide wood in the woodshed. We cut about 20 cords a year, process about 20 cords a year. That's one of my many jobs, well, depending on the year. This is another 2-person cabin, and you can see most folks set their gear up on the porch, their cook stove, their water, and yeah, again, 2 bunks, a wood stove, and they're actually pretty comfortable I could live there for a very long time myself. We have a library at Daisy Pond, and this is not it. This is the Kidney Pond Library, but I couldn't find a picture of the Daisy Pond Library. So the library actually has some readable books, and they are great places for rainy days, for little kids doing puzzles. We have groups that will get together and eat. At the Kidney Library, we do a lot of staff meetings. I've been to firefighting class and search and rescue class, and I can't even think of what else, but plenty of other classes right at these tables here. And this, you may recognize some of these folks. This is what people do at Daisy Pond. If I did not know, but this is an open container in a public place.
Ooh.
So we would not be allowing that.
Well, you didn't take that picture. You were.
I was not there. And so 2 fishermen, and I know 2 nurses and an artist, but sort of typical of Daisy Pond. Lots of people that come to fish, lots of people that come to relax, and most of these folks like to go out on the hit the trail as well. But this is the actual porch of the library at Daisy. So, when I was saying before, what do we do? How do we get our training? This is a day with the Forest Service, our brothers and sisters in the Forest Service. I don't know that I'm in this photo, but I was certainly there that day. We go, we do a couple of trainings with the Forest Service. We do just sort of general helicopter safety, which is what I believe this is. And in these particular trainings, they will come and they will talk about how to safely approach the bird, what they need from us when they're in the area in terms of signaling them, what frequencies to use on the radios. A lot of people don't think of it, but when it's pretty tricky when you're on a rescue trying to get the bird to see you, because everything is green and brown and gray on top of Katahdin or in the woods, wherever you happen to be. So we do a lot of signaling with everything from siloom sticks spinning around to one of the last rescues I did was a space blanket that happened to be bright orange. So they tell us what they need from us. Usually we will, on these training missions, training days, we will go up with them. We get free rides, which is always fun. Everybody jockeys for position. The other thing the Forest Service started to do in the past, I want to say 15 years or so, is they do short haul rescues for us, which are rescues where the patient dangles below the helicopter at the end of a 150-foot line, and we put them in essentially what happens is the Baxter Park Rangers will get dispatched. We'll make the patient as stable as we possibly can. We'll radio to our supervisors that we're on scene, we have a patient, this is what we need. And if they can do an air evac, if it makes sense. Traditionally, the protocol was people have to be in danger of losing life, limb, or eyesight for birds to come. That's the way it used to be, and then COVID hit and things changed. But the Forest Service will come, they fly, they will send a crewman down the line, and they will put the patient into what we call a screamer suit, which is kind of like almost like a Farmer John harness. And then that person, the patient, will strap in with the crewman, so the two of them will go together and they'll fly beneath the bird over to what is called a short haul, because it's typically a very short run to. We often use Caribou Pit, which is right before you get to the south gate on the right-hand side. And the bird will put people very gently down onto the ground to a waiting ambulance. That's typically how we use the Forest Service. And of course, the other thing that we do with these guys is fight fires. The Forest Service is the sort of woodland fire department of the state of Maine. And so I've worked alongside them several times fighting a variety of fires. So this particular day we were talking very basic helicopter safety type stuff. We do it pretty much every year. This here, you can tell by the fact that the gentleman is wearing his yellow Nomex. This is a firefighting discussion. And again, it's the Forest Service. It looks like it might be at Millinocket Airport. And here is the other, we use the Guard out of Bangor for more additional rescue support. This is your faithful correspondent right here. For those of you who know, Charities right here. It's Dean. Some of you might have met Dean, LL Dean. So the Guard come and they have a different rescue system. You can see over here they have a winch. And the Guards, up until now, the Forest Service has not had paramedics, but the Guard has paramedics. So they send a medic to us. And here, this is in Slaughter Pit near Kidney Pond. And we are learning about how to, again, safely approach the bird. And here's the Guard telling us exactly what they need. How to signal them. We do what's called hot loading practice with them, which is the rotors are running and we're bringing the stretcher to the bird while the rotors run. They do have paramedics, so if we have a really grievous injury, sometimes we'll go with the Guard if they're available, because they have the ability to provide more advanced life support on the flight and they're faster. It's, short haul by definition is a sort of short hop. These guys can fly all the way straight to a trauma center in Bangor. Whenever we're working with helicopters, it's kind of neat because they'll find you and hover above you, and it's like an instant hurricane, and they will drop down. Usually they'll drop down an advanced line, and we will help either the paramedic or the crewman stay out of the trees. But it's like you have the coolest kite in the whole world. And then they will drop down, package the patient, and then they will haul the patient up on the winch. The stretcher goes right into the bird and they fly off. So the one that we call depends basically on, well, A, who's available, and then the seriousness of the injury. I did one of the ones in my book a couple of years ago. I did one on the hunt trail that was sort of memorable because we spent the whole night with her and flew the next morning and right off what we call Rescue Rock on the side of the hunt trail. And it's just so cool when these guys show up. It's the greatest sound in the whole world when you're up there and you're super tired and it's cold and it's rainy and you just kind of want to go back down and crawl in bed. So you hear that thrumming and it's like magic. This is a search and rescue training. We do practice improvised carries is what we call this. So this is your faithful correspondent doing an improvised carry where I rigged up a sort of backpack system with 1-inch webbing so that it goes underneath her fanny, and I can hold straps like this so that she's not feeling like she's going to fall over backwards on this piggyback. And I have actually used this one time on the mountain with a thankfully very petite woman. There was 3 of us that we carried her down, and we would each go, you know, I don't know, quarter mile or something, and then we'd sit down and we'd pass her off from all the way from pretty much the gateway on the Hunt Trail, so probably good 4 miles anyway. So we actually do use these improvised carries. You can see behind on the ground is a kayak paddle, so we do things like we'll take 2 kayak paddles and weave a tarp to make an improvised litter. Sometimes we'll use we'll attach a couple backpacks and use the backpacks to provide the frame of a litter. We'll use webbing to make something that 2 people can carry or 4 people can carry. So we will we rig up all kinds of things, and we've used them. Like I said, we've deployed them even several times. You know, we have in our sort of rescue training, we have what's called the ideal to real scenario. So ideally, you know, you'd have a massive crew, and well, ideally the person would fall and they would be, you know, 15 feet from the hospital. But oftentimes in the woods, we have to deal with the real, where you're making a decision. Should you move this person? Well, there's lightning coming down. So yes, you need to move that person, even if it's not, you don't have the optimal way to do so. Because the risk of a fatality is greater than the harm that you're going to do by moving them. So it's the ideal to real spectrum. So at the park now, a lot of us are wilderness first responders. We have a few wilderness first aid or advanced first aid folks, but a lot of us who have been there a long time are now wilderness first responder trained. Which we have some protocols that supersede, at least they used to, what street EMTs can do, because we're in the backcountry, and so, for example, reducing a dislocation. If street paramedics oftentimes might just take you right to the doc and have them give you relaxants and pain medicine and have the doc do it, whereas if you're out going to be overnight on Katahdin and you have a dislocation, that is going to be agony, so we're allowed to reduce it in the field. So it's I forget what our 80 hours of training, something like that, of medical training. So we have wilderness first responder. A lot of us are wildland firefighters. We have, every year we do search and rescue training, we do helicopter safety, we do some form of medical training. Chainsaw training, a lot of us are certified at various levels with chainsaws. Everybody has to have a certain level, but some of us go beyond that. Basically, we have medicine, fire, chainsaw, search and rescue. Those are pretty much, and helicopter safety. I think those are the basics, but then some of us have done de-escalation training, first aid, mental health first aid. We have done death investigation. We have done search and seizure, flat water rescue. I mean, so the park puts us through a whole bunch of trainings, incident command training. This is an actual in-progress rescue. This is your faithful correspondent, and Nick McPherson, who is another ranger. He was at ABOL at the time. This one was, I want to say, 3 or 4 years ago. You can see this was taken by the Forest Service from the helicopter. There's the rope, the crewman, the patient is in red with the screamer suit on. The crewman and the patient are getting ready to evacuate. Basically, this one happened. I keep a radio in my cabin at night, and on this particular evening I heard chatter at, I think it was about 11:30 or so. And so I got out of bed and I walked over and I foolishly picked up the radio and said, "Do you guys need any help out there?" And they said, "Sure, come down to A-Ball." So I went down to A-Ball and they ended up sending Nick and I up, and we spent probably 2-3 hours getting to this patient. We were told she had done her knee, which to us means she's not mobile. Well, we got up there and found that she was walking down the trail with the help of an EMT. And we ended up, we brought splints and whatnot, so we stabilized her knee, and she said she was happy to keep going. So we kept going for basically the rest of the evening. We probably met her at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock at night, and we ended up until 6. We got down to this point just at the end of where the new A-Ball trail is, but it opens up to the old A-Ball trail, where there's no tree cover, so we knew we could fly if we needed to. So we called it into our supervisor, and they made the decision because it was early. It was going to be very hard to get a crew together. She's been up all night already in pain, so they figured they would get the Forest Service in and we'd airlift her. So Ben Goodwin here is the crewman from the Forest Service in the white helmet. He shows up, they show up, and they circle, and we signal to them, and they send Ranger Goodwin down the line, and he gets this patient all ready to be evacuated by the air. Meanwhile, the plane has taken, the helicopter's taken off and is just sort of doing wider circles, so they're not ready to top us anymore. And we, before the helicopter gets there, I should say, we make sure that the perimeter is all clear so nobody's getting hit by flying rocks. And on this particular day, I was astonished. I went down, it was 6 o'clock, so people are starting up the mountain for the day. And I said to this one particular woman, I said, "You're going to have to wait right here because we're about to do a medevac and we don't want anybody hit by debris." And she went, and I was a little amazed that anyone would think that way, because to me, not only is, this is important stuff, but it's also so cool. I mean, you get to firsthand, and her partner came up and said, "Sure, Ranger, we'll help you." And I said, "If you could keep everybody else back behind you too." I just was a little shocked by that reaction. But Ben drops from the sky. He puts the patient in the screamer suit and clips in, and they fly away. And then the next day, the news comes out, and it says, "Ranger Ben Goodwin rescues woman off Katahdin. 2 Baxter Park Rangers helped." And I just thought it was funny because we had spent 5-6 hours with her, and Ben was there for maybe 12 minutes. But we don't do it for the glory, but I just thought it was funny. 2 Baxter Park Rangers helped. This is a graphic that shows SAR is how we refer to search and rescue. So this is, the park had a bunch of studies done. Obviously this was 2019 on how often we go, where we go, what we respond to. And this shows that 2019 we didn't do a whole lot of SAR, which is interesting because I think it was 2019 we had 4 fatalities, but only 39 total incidents. And you can see here that the majority are, this is the Chimney Pond Trail, so the majority, Hamlin Ridge, Chimney, Saddle, Cathedral, this is all east side, and actually Hugh Taylor Knife Edge too. So the west side where I am is the blue and the red quadrants, which only represented 14 rescues that year. Usually myself, I get involved in 5 or 6 cool things, incidents, whether that be a fire or a rescue every year, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you figure 20 years, it's been quite a few. But you can see here, Chimney Pond Trail, this is just a simple numbers game, popularity contest. Chimney feeds all these various trails up the mountain, the Dudley and the Saddle, which is probably the most popular way to go up the mountain, and Hamlin, and the Cathedral. So it's obviously has the most activity. And us over here, we have it's about 35% of the incidents. I've done a handful. I've done one on Hamlin Ridge. I've done a couple on Chimney. I've done one on Knife Edge, and one on the Saddle. But we don't get called to the east side very often. Those of us on the west side, unless it's a really big event. I think the last time I was involved with a rescue over there, I brought the sandwiches. You're very popular when you show up with the sandwiches. That was a 2-day rescue, and myself and another ranger the next day were sent up with provisions to feed the whole crew that was up there. And then, of course, we end up helping with the carry-out, too. But the sandwiches people love you. This is another graphic that's showing the top 5 causes of SAR, and you can see this is a much longer period. We have at the park, since I've been there, we have a medical director. So that is the person that has the basically final say on all of our training, protocols, and essentially what we can and cannot do in the field. And they're available if we have a really extreme question. We can actually get them from, way up here. We call on the radio to our duty officer and say, we're not sure how to approach this. I've never seen it done, but it is theoretically possible to call and say, well, you guys can do this or that, but you can't do this. So you'll see here, it's pretty obvious. I'm surprised these two don't flip. That exhaustion, dehydration, I would guess would be our #1 customer, so to speak. But it's lower extremity injuries, which makes sense. That's the part that's hitting all that hard granite. We've seen everything from really gross breaks to ankle, blown out knees, twisted ankles, so the whole gamut. Exhaustion, dehydration is we try not to go, our protocol is unless we know there's an actual injury, we don't go up. Unless the folks are elderly or very, very young, or the weather's going to change, there has to be a reason for us. But if it's a pleasant August night and it's routine that people will come up to my office and say, Ranger, I see headlamps. And I'm like, yeah, do you see headlamps? Some folks are still up there, and it's pretty routine that we have people up there late into the night, sometimes overnight. Unless we know they are injured, we don't typically go. So usually we're not up there for exhaustion, but sometimes when it flips over into dehydration, we'll go. Lost parties, you see, is #3. That's not uncommon. We've done I can't count how many searches, because people, like I said, they like to go off trail to try to go places faster. A lot of parties, even at Dacey Pond, going down to the Niagaras on the Appalachian Trail, which is one of the busiest, most popular trails in the park. I'll have some people will go down to the falls, and the other people will, a group of kids that's going faster than their parents, and the kids will go to the falls, and the parents will keep going straight, and they get separated, and then somebody runs up to me in a panic. It's not uncommon that we see. And of course, we always recommend that groups hike together. Go only as fast as your slowest person. But there's a lot of people that don't, post Don Fenler. They still haven't got that message yet. Head injuries. I'm trying to think of how, I know of several, but I don't think I've worked, well, I did actually a couple of years ago have a head injury, but it was in the campground, so it wasn't up on high. And then upper extremities, I remember a guy who was coming down through the monkey bars and got his arms dislocated because his pack got stuck and his weight went down. So we get a lot of dislocation injuries, and sometimes broken arms. I've seen plenty of those. Usually, like I said, I think the average per year, I'm not saying that it happens every year, I'm saying if you average out all the years, 1 fatality a year. said, I think 2019 we had 4. I know we had 2, I want to say, COVID year. And this shows you SAR incidents by month. So, and these are 2016, 17, 18, 19, and you can see it's pretty expected. I mean, no secret. Park opens to most, the popular summer season begins in May, and the most people start arriving after school lets out. So July and August is the busiest time for hiking and climbing. September is pretty popular as well, and then things start to slow down. And then we have little spikes occasionally in the winter, because we do have a winter camping season, and people like to climb the mountain or ski. But it's pretty much as you might expect. Summer, shoulder season's a little bit more popular than the winter, but most of the action happens in high summer. This was 2020 during COVID, and we were at during COVID, we did a lot of our training via Zoom, and I was at home in May, and I believe I was doing a psychological first aid training, and that morning the head of the Forest Service, who is on the Baxter Park Authority, one of our big bosses, got on to welcome us all back to the season, say hi, and she told us that as of that early May, this would have been like May 5th or 6th or something, first week of May, as of that period they already had 400 some fires the Forest Service had responded to. And so I texted one of my ranger friends and said, we're going to have a fire this year. Well, by that afternoon, we were in psychological first aid, and all these rangers kept signing off all the year round, saying, going to fight the fire, going to fight the fire. And sure enough, they had this, one of the bigger blazes in recent years, 40-some acres down along the West Branch. And I was just hankering to go, and I called up my supervisor, and he said, you're too far away. And so I kind of was thinking when I woke up the next morning that they'd still be battling it, and they'd still be, there'd be a lot of tired rangers, and they'd be looking for extra help. They had put it out already. So I get to see, like everybody else, this is the Forest Service with a bucket. They had put it out so quickly because they were able to divert 2 aircraft with buckets, so basically air support. They called them in from a couple other fires that were up north because this one was pretty easily containable, they determined. But it was a good sized fire, and we don't see anywhere near the amount of fire that they see out west, thank goodness. This one they think might have been caused, they still, as far as I know, have never closed the investigation officially, but they think it was illegal campers and an illegal campfire. We see that. I've done a handful of illegal campfire, put them out. Lily and I put one out in the summer last year. Other than that, I think the biggest one that I fought was up, that one that I pointed out was way up in the north end of the park. We had to actually leave the park to come around and enter. You go all the way around, exit the park, go through paper company lands back into the park in order to get to the fire. But it was another one that we were able to control within a day, and just exciting adventure. I don't want to see anything burn, but I like to be on the crew when if it does.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do you fight all the fires?
We
I mean, it's just natural cause, if it's a lightning strike or active cause or something.
Yeah, we the park has turned to the official line now is if it threatens any structures, camping areas, obviously people, then yes, we'll go after it. We do fight most of them, to be fair. I can't think of too many that we've allowed to burn, but that is something that we've been talking about is unless it's threatening, because it is a natural process, of course. But most of the time I end up doing this. which is telling people where the moose are, checking in campers, and answering questions. So this is the inside of the duty station, and these are day users that just had a few questions about hiking and, you know, where to go, what to do. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. Usually when people come, they're looking for moose. Over there, actually this was a bird. But this is what they're usually looking for. And I usually tell them, Canada. Where do you find moose? Go to Canada. There, for sure you'll find them there. But the moose population has decreased pretty dramatically, or the visibility of moose at Baxter Park, as most of you probably know. And it's been attributed to with climate change, the migration of the winter tick north. And winter ticks don't bother humans, but they take down moose, especially the calves. They just have a hard time. You know, they'll get 10,000 ticks on them, and they'll just sort of bleed out due to they become anemic, bleed out due to 10,000 cuts, basically, which is really sad. But we'll find carcasses just covered in ticks. The other thing that is notable is, as I mentioned before, we have conservation lands all the way around the park now, and the irony is that moose like clear cuts. They like to eat the fresh growth. So that could be another reason why they're headed north. It could be a climate change, just simply trying to escape heat. Nobody has a firm answer yet, but when I started at the park, every shift, so I'm up there 3.5 days, every shift I would see sign at the very least that they're around. You know, you see scat, you see footprints. So obviously I would see them periodically. In recent years, it's, you know, I can go months without seeing any sort of sign. And I think maybe 2 or 3 that we saw last year, 3 or 4 maybe. That's me and my girlfriend Lily out and about. Most of the time, this is again where you'll find me at night. One thing that I never realized when I became a park ranger is how much paperwork park rangers do. Here I am logging campers into registering campers, but we have to do a work report every week. We do incident reports for everything that we respond to. We do lots of statistics of trails, trail use, canoe registration. I'm trying to think what else. Stuff that we sell. We sell books and maps and things. So we do a lot of paperwork. And whenever we go on a rescue, we always try to make sure the other person is the one that's taking the notes. So here you see we have a base radio, two-way radio. A lot of people wonder why we have solar panels at the park. Well, it's to operate these radios. So I have a base radio, which my base radio can make it all the way to Millinocket and to Matagamon, and a lot of other radios can't. So I will do a lot of relaying in the morning for other rangers at other stations that can't communicate very well. The big granite slab in between Daisy and the east side, it makes it pretty hard for us to talk to each other over there. I can often hit Russell Pond. I can usually hit the north end and, like I said, Matagamon Gate. So Daisy's in a pretty good place in terms of communications. And then we have our little handheld radio, and those are, I can usually get, sometimes I can get as far as the gate. It's kind of spotty from Daisy. So I usually have that and to just talk to my supervisor, any passing duty officers that might have questions or anything. Kidney, Katahdin Stream, A-Ball, I can usually get all those stations with my handheld. Back here you see we have an AED now, we have oxygen, we have Narcan, we have epinephrine and our duty packs, our fast packs. You can see some folks left behind their pillows, so those go into headquarters and get returned. Lots of little handouts for folks on wildlife and other campgrounds. Yeah, and the rules. And here we have our little, propane lights that we have in each building. So I do a lot of just sitting in my desk with the lamp lit. Those things get surprisingly warm too. And this is what I see at the end of my season. Almost every year now, we go out with snow. And oftentimes it seems like, I've been saying to people that I feel like I cut my way into the park these days. We just have massive blowdowns that we have to clear when we arrive. And typically in mid to late October, as we're getting ready to leave, we have big blows again where we get either snow or just a lot of wet weather, and we get just lots of deadfall, and so we end up cutting our way out. I know 2 years ago, my very last day, we cut all the way from Dacey to Mattagamon, actually beyond the gate even, and into South Branch because there were so many trees down. So that's something that we do, it seems like almost every year now, on the way in and on the way out. And I know Dacey got hit pretty hard. I don't remember when that storm was, but this winter, so I know there's more cutting to be done when I get back. I was up there, Lily and I were up there for Valentine's Day, so we got to get to walk across Dacey. The funny thing was, well, I'll get there in a second. This is my truck, and I only have a two-wheel drive truck, my trusty steed. So when snow gets to be a couple inches, it gets a little scary on places like A-Ball Hill. But this was end of my season, I guess 2 years ago. So sometimes, what I was going to say is sometimes I get to come back in the winter and do projects and hang out with other rangers. But the irony was, until this past winter, I'd never been to Dacey Pond. This is us up at South Branch, and I've been to Roaring Brook, and I've been to Chimney, and I've been to Russell, and I've been to South Branch and Trout Brook and Katahdin Stream, but I had never been an A-Ball, but I've never been to Dacey, of all places. So this year, Lily and I got to go in for 3 or 4 days around Valentine's Day, which was just really neat to see. And one of the things that's fun about that time of year is stuff like this. This was that same trip that you just saw me in the snow machine. We saw a family of lynx hunting, which was really kind of cool. Essentially what they did was, it was just based on size alone, it was obviously 2 parents and 2 young. And one of the parents and 2 of the young went into the woods and flushed snowshoe hares out into the road. And the other one stood in the road and then chased down the snowshoe hare. And what was kind of neat was how we were very respectful distance away, but they showed very little concern that we were standing there looking at them. And you always hear of lynx as being so secretive, and but they couldn't be bothered letting us take their pictures. And here's oh no, that's me again. This is out on South Branch Pond. We were cutting trail for people coming in. This is the other guy. And they are just really magnificent. They're, I mean, and no worry whatsoever that we were standing there. But obviously, this is, it's much farther away. I was zooming in, so we were giving the animals their space, but just pretty spectacular. A lot of people want to know, what was COVID like? I wrote my book after the book, the narrative arc takes place across the COVID season. So this is me and my supervisor and one of my best buddies, Bruce, who many of you have met, wearing our masks. And we had to mask up whenever we were in trucks. We had a lot of cleaning protocol. We had to clean everything twice a day. And when we had rescues, we were supposed to wear Tyvek suits and masks and goggles, and it was not very pleasant. And I responded to one rescue down along the Blueberry Ledges Trail during COVID, and the woman had broken her ankle and I could hear her screaming from about a couple hundred yards away. And the protocol was for us to ask her questions about her exposure. So she's sitting there obviously very uncomfortable, and I have to ask her these questions, and I felt horrible. It reminded me of when I was a firefighter and I degloved one of my fingers. I almost lost my finger jumping off the truck. And I had coated in blood, and I was out at the local hospital waiting to be seen, and they sat me down and took my insurance, and I'm just... And it just that's how I felt asking this poor lady questions before I could treat her. And this is Daisy Pond at the end of, maybe it was a few years ago. No snow that year, but that is why we do it. That's what it's all about right there. One of the things that's neat about the mountain is when you get to look at this view every day, it's different every day. I always just marvel at all the different cloud formations and light patterns and color of the foliage. Everybody obviously loves it when it's the fall and everything gets super colorful, but I really like it in the spring when everything's budding out and it's this lime green and it's just so beautiful. But it's never the same. And this is again why we're here. So I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability, if anybody has some. Yes?
When you're out on a rescue, who's watching the home for it?
We have, typically, they try to assign, it depends on the situation, but most of the time they'll have the ranger from Kidney cover Daisy, or I'll cover Kidney, depending on who's going where. Sometimes, I know we've had rescues where one person has to cover 3 or 4 campgrounds. Depends on how bad the situation is and sort of operational need, as we say. But usually somebody's still around to keep things running. Other questions? Yes?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to say, do you remember Teresa Terrio at all?
I do. I know the name.
I'm her mom. She wanted to come tonight because she had her 4th baby.
Oh, no kidding.
For years because she remembers you well.
So. Oh, nice. Yeah. Awesome. Well, say hello. 4 babies.
Yes.
Awesome. Other questions?
Andy, last time we were there was big blowdowns down at Kidney, probably at Daisy too.
Yes.
And there was discussion about whether that was ever going to get cleaned up. Did they do that at all, or is it just laying there?
No, we cleaned a lot of it. There's still some down now, new stuff. A couple of seasons ago, we were offered extensions at the end of the year, and spent was that 2021, I think. We did a lot of cutting. There was a crew of, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us, and we spent a whole week cutting and hauling stuff out of the woods, and a lot of it we used as material to build lean-tos. So it was kind of neat to reclaim it that way. There's still a lot you'd still see a lot in the woods, especially Kidney got really hammered that year, and especially on the approach in, you can still see a lot of, it's like windrows. I mean, it's just crazy how many trees are down. And this winter, apparently, it's been bad again, so we'll see. Yes?
You work at the park 6 months out of the year. What
Yes.
do you do the other 6?
I write. I actually make my living as a writer, and I'm a park ranger because I always wanted to be a park ranger. Yeah, so I write full time. Usually I do a lot of ghostwriting and books and magazine articles and scripts, whatever will pay the bills. Yeah. Yes?
Winter camping.
Yes.
So you have a cabin at Daisy that's open, or 2 in Kidney?
Yeah.
And where else?
Pretty much every campground pretty much is available. Daisy, we have, I want to say 5 now. so half the campground is open, and Kidney has a healthy few too. But a lot of people will go to, there's a bunkhouse at South Branch that's very popular, a bunkhouse at Roaring Brook is very popular, a bunkhouse at Chimney that's very popular. And people will go into Russell and stay in lean-tos and stay at the bunkhouse. I mean, people go pretty much everywhere in the winter.
On a given day, on a given nice day, what's the population in there?
It'd be hard to say. I don't think I could give you an honest guess. At Dacey, on the weekends, it's pretty full, typically full. Chimney is typically full, almost daily.
In the wintertime?
Yeah, and when I say full, I mean...
No, I mean within the restrictions of it, or whatever.
Yeah.
100 people, or...
No, I mean maybe in the whole park. I wouldn't. We have snowmobilers that will pass through. We have folks that will come in on day use, and then we have, like I say, Dacey would probably have I would guess an average at Dacey, like on a weekend, would probably have about 20 people, maybe 15. And Kidney probably would have 8 or 10, but Chimney's, the bunkhouse. I've only been there once in the winter in the bunkhouse, but it was full. I mean, every bunk was taken, and then people were camping outside.
So are you there a year round? Are you within that? They have a winter crew that's in there.
We do. Yeah, we have park has about 60 employees now, and in the summer there's 2 per duty station. In the winter there's probably about 10 now that are full-time year-round. And that includes law enforcement, maintenance, and interpretive staff, people that, we have a naturalist and we have an interpretive specialist who spend the winter doing recruiting interns and doing media stuff and getting information out and doing research and all that kind of stuff, answering questions. But yeah, it's much smaller. Everything is much smaller, but much wilder. So it's kind of the time to be there. It's spectacular. You always feel when you're there in the winter that if you made a mistake, you could really pay for it. So it makes it that much more exciting, I guess. We had fun.
How do you get in there? Is it all plowed in?
No. So the park is, the snowmobiles are allowed to run the gut of the park, only the tote road. They can't go on any of the spur roads, they can't go up to Roaring Brook, just the tote road. So that's one avenue, and some people will sled in and then snowshoe to camp somewhere. But most people don't want to park their sled and just leave it out on the main drag. So most people come in. The Golden Road is plowed pretty much all the way through, I believe. But A-Ball Bridge is the hub where we have our snow sled and sheds. It's a sort of staging point. And then the big parking lot, if the public were coming in, they'd go to the big parking lot at A-Ball Bridge and either ski or snowshoe in, depending on your destination. If you'd probably go to the A-Ball Beach Trail and go over to A-Ball, to hit the road, the park's main road, and then head down to Roaring Brook, so you take a right and go down towards the gate and then go up to Roaring Brook. Or, if you're going to Kidney or A-Ball or any of the points west, you take a left. So we went in up the Foss Knowlton Trail out of the same A-Ball Bridge staging area, which was about 6 miles on snowshoes. Most people have tote sleds, so they'll sled in with their gear. And it's a doable day. It's one of the things you notice when you're coming in on human power is that everywhere you go in the park is uphill. I never realized before I tried to go to Roaring Brook in the winter how much elevation you're gaining to get to the parking lot at Roaring Brook. I mean, it was brutal. And that's a very long day from A-Ball Bridge to the Park Tote Road down to the gate up to Roaring Brook. I mean, that's a very long day, and you'll feel it. But it is pretty spectacular.
Those links were on a plowed road.
That was coming in from the north. We were working up at South Branch Pond, So the park also, we have sled sheds up and sort of staging point just outside the park to the north. So that was that wasn't even in the park yet. That was on coming in from, through Matagamon before you get into the park. That is plowed, but not as the park is. It ends basically before you get to the park. So as you're driving into the park from the south, you get to the two ponds, Ambajijis, Millinocket Lake, where the Northwoods Trading Post. That's as far as the road is plowed, and then everybody jumps over onto the Golden Road and then gets up to Aball Bridge. So you can drive to that point, but. And then I just read the other day, it was just in the news that I forget how many people they said that park staff has caught trying, or maybe the local police have caught trying to drive the unplowed road. Yeah, people will do all kinds of stuff. Other questions? No? Well, I'd be happy to sign books back there if anybody is interested. Sell and sign. Thanks very much to the library for having me.
Thank you.